Hey everyone, welcome back to Channel Talks. I've got a really important announcement. We've been going for 6 years, and I just want to have a real quick thank you to all our listeners, all our viewers, and everyone who comes back and gives me amazing feedback as to why we need to continue this. I was told that it's the longest serving. I don't know if that's true, but my friends at Canales tell me it's the longest serving channel podcast, and I'm very proud of that. And what's really important today is I have one of what I would call one of my friends and an easily identified industry expert, global industry expert, to talk about all things channel, Moheb Moses. For those who don't know Moheb, Moheb is the founder and MD of Channel Dynamics, which is arguably the most influential training and advisory channel organization on the planet. And this is why, if I had $1 for everyone that came back and said to me after Moheb's controversial newsletter in January of this year, you've got to talk to Moheb, because he says, how is that 100% channel strategy working for you? Moheb, welcome to the channel. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you very much. I can't believe it's January and that I wrote that article. But delighted to be here and with you and Scott. And I think today should be a fun day.
Yeah, it will be. And thank you. And Scott, welcome back to the channel. I mean, my partner in crime, my business partner for way too many years, and also my business wife. Anyway, let's get on with it. Moheb, I'm going to ask you, what has been the response to that article from all players in the channel, vendors, distributors, resellers, because you touched on a really important point as far as I'm concerned, and that is it has to be customized.
Okay, so what prompted me to say that is every time I go to a trade show or meet a new vendor and I say, tell me about your business model, they very proudly say, we are 100% channel. Right. And I understand why that's important. And it gets it to partners as well. The really important question that I always ask after that is, okay, of your business that you get, what percent is driven by the channel and what percentage is driven by your team? And it's surprising how often that there's this kind of apologetic look that appears on the face and it says, well, 80, 90% is driven by us and 10% by the channel. And to me, that's not a channel model. It's a fulfillment model. Sorry, a channel fulfillment model. It's still being driven by the vendor. And that impacts partners as well, because they hear it. Partners hear that all the time. We're 100% channel. But what partners are looking for is something that's profitable. And I just want to, we'll talk more about this, I know. But that word profitable, for a lot of vendors, it just means the margin. You make 25% or 30% or whatever it is, and they think that's profit. But it isn't. Profit is your revenue minus your cost of goods, minus the time and money that you spend, in expenses. Yeah. And so it is a whole profitability model. And so it doesn't matter whether you make 5% or 30%, it's what you keep at the end after you've generated that. And if you're only making 5%, and a great example is Salesforce.com, if you make bugger all on the product, but you make a ton of money on services, it's really profitable.
So, Scott, apparently, you've run a few very successful distributors in your life.
Yes.
Started a few. How does that resonate with you? And I want you to respond from the lens of, I don't care. I've got to create my own innovation in order to work these channel programs. And I'm going to do stuff, because I know, because I was there, where we said to the vendors, your channel program sucks. We're going to do this, finance this, create these services, and a lot of it has to be with reducing their churn while we build their business. Talk to me from the lens as to why that was important for you at the time.
Well, I think to Moheb's point, there's two types of vendors out there. The vast majority are vendors with a channel, which is your channel fulfillment model. And then the very special ones are channel led, which they're investing in the channel to make them profitable and make them drive the sales. There's not a lot of them. In the world where I come from, as my wife will tell you, I ask for forgiveness, not permission. So I basically discounted the channel models that were coming out of North America because, Australia and APAC is a lot smaller market. the APAC business is a lot different to the US market. So we just stormed off and created our own services and wrapped our arms around the products. Like originally when F5 Networks, we took that product on, they had no advanced hardware replacement. And if you lost a big IP, which was running your entire web backbone, things were going to go south very quickly. So we started adding those sort of services. And then, downstream, they don't exist anymore, but Dimension Data would have a back-to-back contract with us. So we were creating these services that you could run down. And again, I mean, the reason the iasset platform was ultimately born was you needed to know where everything was and who owned what and what contracts were out everywhere. And that was our definitive services, or one of our definitive services inside the business. But I didn't wait for the US to tell me what the channel program was. I just stormed off and did it anyway.
Right. And that's important, Moheb, because a lot of these channel programs, what they have is money, right? And money to invest inside their channel. But they're prescriptive in terms of what the vendor believes they need their channel to execute on, with very little margin.
Yeah. So can I just jump back to something that Scott was saying? Because distribution, in my view, is the least understood tier in the channel. I also think it is the tier that you probably learn more about how the channel operates than either one. Sorry, if it was up to me, I'd make every vendor work in distribution for 2 years before they became a channel manager.
Me too, Moheb.
Okay. It's the only way you actually understand how the channel really works, right? But so I'm just going to get theoretical for just 1 second and come back and then talk to this point. If you think about the role of the channel, it's to fill a gap between what a vendor makes and what a customer's experience is, right? So the closer the product is to the experience, and I used Apple earlier, so on Apple iPhone, it's so close to the customer experience, there's not much to do, right? And it's reflected in the margin. Compare that to Oracle or SAP or Salesforce, where the product is so, such a small component compared to the business process re-engineering, licensing, blah, blah, blah. There's a much greater role for the channel, and it's reflected in the margin, the services attached, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But there's bits where in that little gap, if you can consolidate it and make it cheaper or more efficient, that's distribution. So inventory management, right? Because vendors holding inventory, partners holding inventory. Now, if you can consolidate that, it's cheaper, more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as we've moved more towards software and so on, that's become less relevant, but other things have appeared. I reckon support is one of them. And, I could probably mention, and you guys would know this guy in Centra, they did that. They said, let's consolidate support and we'll build a business out of that. Some people have done it with licensing. And what Scott did is said, let's do that with managing renewals and so on. Anything that in that gap between what a vendor makes and what a customer wants, that a channel, if you can consolidate that, make it cheaper and more efficient, distribution plays a great role. The problem is, if you don't understand that and you just think they're a bank and warehouse, I think distribution or that tier, call it, collaborate or consolidate or whatever, but that tier of distribution is the most underutilized tier in our industry.
Well, look, I think you're right. And a lot of what you're saying is so true at a general level. It's like table stakes, right? But I think, and this is where, and you and I have had this conversation, I think your question, how's that 100% channel strategy working for you, vendor? My response is, well, how is that 100% channel strategy working for you, channel? Because when there's 100% channel strategy, it's abrogation. You now do it. Yeah. And you still got to do it off 2%. Now, I'm only going to be able to fulfill what already happened. But if I want to create demand, it's going to be, you got to fund that process for me, because where else am I going to find it? And I'm coming from a distributor who, by the time Distribution Central was sold, we had a 93% total addressable market share. The best anyone had ever seen before then was mid-30s, early 30s. And it was because of our investment. And what we did was we went back to every vendor that we had and said, invest in what we're doing, because your reps will not care about churn. They're on the next deal. Your reps will not care about that renewal. They're on the next deal. Your reps will not care about the most important part of what they do, because your reps are working for a vendor and the vendor thinks they live in isolation, and they don't. All right. So only someone in the channel can actually manage that for them, and therefore provide an opportunity to them that they can't ignore, that will say, I'm going to invest in your business. That's on the channel. Scott?
Nick?
Tell me why I'm wrong.
I mean, look, really, there's value at different levels, and there's still time and place distribution facilities that need to operate for laptops and servers and all the other hardware bits and pieces. But on every distributor, if we're talking distribution, you need to be able to add services over the top. If you want to Moheb's original point, which is all about net profit, right? If you just do stock and credit, the margins are irrelevant. You're paying huge amounts in insurance costs to cover credit insurance. It's just not a market you want to be in. And you've seen some of the bigger distributors start to shift in their services. You've got Arrow with Arrowsphere, you've got Ingram with Xvantage. All of these distributors are realizing they need to lift their game, and it's happening. And it's been happening for some time, but it's happening more quickly now. And I think with the addition of AI, that's going to change the whole game again. You know, it's going to shorten the cycles that we're seeing in value rather than the amount of time it's taken over the last few years.
Okay, so that's a very practical response, and I appreciate it. So Moheb, you're the guru that needs to talk to the channel and tell them what they need to do, otherwise they don't need to talk to you. All right. We have I was going to leave this till later, but Scott has now baited me.
Okay.
We've got an agentic Ingrid in our platform, which can actually tell you this is how much dormant revenue you've left behind, and it's at a minimum 10x.
Okay.
Is the partner, not even the vendor. This is the partner. This is the distributor. It's not even the vendor. Minimum 10x. Now, to be fair, some of that might be churn. And in fact, probably a lot of that is churn. But that's the point as well. You've got to manage churn. How would you, as an advisor to a vendor and at the same time a channel partner, get them to understand how important their installed base is?
Yeah. I guess so. The challenge for the vendors, and it is just the nature of our industry, is vendor, especially vendor sales reps, aren't paid on renewals and maintenance. They're paid on net new business. So, you know, if you've got the option to chase a shiny new ball that's worth $10, or go back into your existing base and get $100, but you're only going to get paid your commission on the $10. That's what you do, right? That's the dilemma. And especially if you're a partner and you are ranked, whether it doesn't matter what the measurements are, whether you call it diamond or gold or elite or whatever, but you only move up that tier by achieving the vendor's goals, which is finding new business. Most of the sales reps get rewarded on that. So it's only the folks who are genuinely understand profitability, and it tends to be, and you spot them, when you're talking to one of the partners who's got a sound business mind, which is, we're going to do what's profitable versus I'm going to chase the next new technology or whatever it is. And if we rattled off the names, you'd know them. They're the folks that have been around for 30, 40 years because they kept evolving their business with one thing in mind, which is keeping their staff fed, growing the business profitably, and creating a culture and services that kept their customers happy, as opposed to got excited by new technology and especially the ones, and again, you hear it in the language, the ones that will play off one vendor versus another on a few points, when, to your point, your existing base, if you manage it properly, is worth 10x that.
Yep, absolutely.
So I look at the partners that have been successful, and it's the ones that have valued relationships, that have understood the business and realized that, yeah, you can save a few points here and a few points there by haggling and playing people off, but it's when you leverage the relationships you have with vendors and build strong relationships and go deeper, they're the ones that tend to be successful.
So as I say, Moheb, trust is earned, and it's that trust that you need to build with the vendor or your distributor, said if you're a service provider, is critical. And, to your point, I did a post a couple of months ago about the only time vendors care about renewals in reality is when their growth curve starts to flatten, because they're now scrambling for extra revenue and their net new sales are not coping.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good big point. And I want to ask a question to both of you. Every customer, this is my premise, every customer has invested in technology. Let's take, for example, security, cybersecurity. Everyone has cybersecurity. Everyone is invested in cybersecurity. So if I'm a cybersecurity vendor and I want to grow, I have to take someone else's business. It's not really net new, it's steal. So therefore, it's churn. So who protects churn? A vendor has never done a good job of doing it. If you look at the top security vendors at the moment, you'd be surprised who's bang jumped up the ranks. Cisco was like almost nothing 10 years ago. They owned it 10 years ago. And then over the next 5 years, nothing, right? Because Pix was useless. And then they're number 2 behind Palo Alto Networks. And Checkpoint, who owned the whole thing, is number 7. Now, churn needs to be protected. Who's going to protect that? Not the vendor, because the vendor's not interested. They're interested in stealing business. Who's going to protect their business?
I guess the question is it that critical? Isn't that how our industry evolves, by you upgrading? I mean, the car that you have now may not be the car that you had a few years ago. The house, people who live in really large houses still think that they need a bigger house, right? So, okay, that is a,
Then you go and buy a farm, Mohib.
No, right. And that's it's kind of silly. Why do people do things they don't like doing to get more stuff that they don't want? I don't know, but it is just the nature of people. Society says you've got to do better, you've got to get bigger, etc. And so it doesn't matter what you have, even if the technology didn't do much. At a certain point in time, people just go, I need a change. So churn is just going to be natural. People are going to want to upgrade, get something better, something bigger. The question is whether the churn is warranted because you're getting something better, or the churn happens because you took your eye off the ball and you gave bad customer service. That one does. That's the problem. If you've lost, not because someone's become better, but because you've become worse, then that is a problem you should fix. But if somebody's going to become better, that should be a wake-up call to you to say you've got to improve as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw this back on you, Scott, because you've seen so much of this happen. It's very rarely because someone's better. It's because they just didn't know.
It is. It's a fundamental lack of knowledge, but there is also a level, especially in the big vendors, there's a level of arrogance, which is, I've done the net new sale, I own the customer, they have to renew. That's where they see their life. They don't understand that although they'll understand customer success, trying to do customer success across a global channel also has its challenges, and you need to add in partner success, distribution success. There's a whole lot of pieces to it, but usually they don't know because their data is inadequate or lost, or they can't see through what I call the fog of war, which is the channel's not providing the point of sale information with all of the entities connected. But really, I think it's for the bigger ones, it's a level of arrogance, which is, they'll keep buying from us because we've already sold the kit. They need to renew. I'll tell you right now, I've got one big manufacturer who don't send maintenance contracts out that's under, I think, $5,000. Now, the critical pieces of equipment that are running the customers that have got those sub $5,000 maintenance contracts, they still need to be under maintenance, but the vendor can't cope with it, so they just don't bother. It's just crazy. I mean, there is so much money sitting out there in the field that's just being missed completely.
So, Mohib, hey, how would you advise your customers based on what you just heard?
Oh, there's how I'd advise them, and then there's reality, unfortunately. So, really, and when I say reality, it's this artificial quarterly number that has to be met, right? So that's I say it's artificial because it's self-imposed. If you didn't have that, you'd have much longer views. But that is the way Wall Street runs, and that's why most share portfolios and stock options and so on are driven. So, I can make advice, but it's not going to make any difference. So the other aspect as well, and I know what I'm about to say may be unfair to some vendors, but most country managers running vendors in Australia, they are sales managers effectively. They're measured on revenue, but for a lot of vendors, they're not measured on the overall profitability that's being driven by the US. Mm-hmm. And if you're measured on new customers and revenue, then stuff like renewals, etc., doesn't make much difference. Again, like I said, do you sell something worth $10 and make money on it, or do you sell something worth $100 and you don't get commissioned on it? And that's the driver. So,
if I was a conspiracy theorist, based on what you've just told me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that these guys win a deal, they don't give it what happens next year, and then they'll win it back again, because that's the only way they get paid. They don't get paid on holding a customer. They get paid on winning customers, whether they're a lost customer or a new customer. Get paid on winning. If I was a conspiracy theorist, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. What I'm saying is the problem that I have with the premise of I've got a house and I want a bigger house, all right, or I've got 10 pieces of artwork and I need 20 pieces of artwork, or 3 televisions instead of 5, or whatever. In real life, you hoard. In business, you get rid of, because if you move to a new technology, you're going to get rid of the old technology. It's gone. And the cost of implementation is massive. It's absolutely massive, the cost of implementation. Okay. It is much easier for someone to stick with what they're doing and be indulged by their channel partners as to why they should continue to use additional features, additional benefits, just additional technology benefits. All right. And with agentic AI at the moment, there's just ridiculous amounts. If you just stuck to your installed base and worked on that, there is no channel programmer that I've seen, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is why I want to interview you. There is no channel program that I'm aware of from a vendor that promotes what I just said. So it might be useless or it might be useful. You tell me.
No, because no one makes money and no one gets paid if a customer doesn't buy anything, right? That's what a vendor cares about. Or a vendor's survival, unless they've got a services component, but a vendor's survival relies on them selling more stuff, right? Doesn't matter whether it's computers or toothpaste or whatever, right? You survive by selling more stuff. So it is not in a vendor's interest to have you, as a customer, continue with the products you have. Now, what that means, and that's what drives innovation, right? So I've got to come up with something new and interesting and exciting for you to want to do that, right? You don't upgrade your car if the new car doesn't have any better features, but if it goes faster, better air conditioning, GPS, self-driving, blah, 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 you upgrade. Same with technology. However, for a partner, and that's where it's different, they're not driven by selling a new thing. They're driven by selling something. And that something could be services. It could be advice. It could be whatever it is. It could be maintenance. So, interestingly, if I look at for AI to work, so that's going to be an area for growth, obviously. But for that to work, there's a ton of data that exists that is rubbish. And unless you clean that up, then the stuff you get out of AI is not going to be great.
I need to throw that back on Scott, right?
Yeah.
Because I have, and I've driven Scott crazy over the years. There's no such thing as bad data. Nothing. No, it's not true. Invoice data is not bad data because something got sold. It needs to be rearranged for a different purpose. The original purpose was to just sell some shit. The new purpose is to expand on that sale. So you need to rearrange it. It's not bad data. Scott, tell me why I'm wrong.
I know, and then after you, Scott, I want to tell him he's wrong too.
Okay. You're not wrong. Let's change it from the data's not right to there's holes in it. That's the biggest problem. There is missing data that is a challenge for a lot of people to rearrange because they might be missing one of the indices. And when I say an indice, a serial number or an entity reference or whatever it is, you've got to have some basics in there. But as you know, when we're out selling a platform, as I say to all the customers, you know, they get very focused on, we've got to clean the data before it goes in or it won't work. Well, I always say to them, put the data in you've got now because you're not going to be worse off than you were. And the platform will clean as you go. And rather than cleaning 200,000 records before you load, you clean 20 a day with each sales rep. Bingo, in 12 months' time, if it's a 12-month cycle, you're clean and up and operational. And then AI can do its thing. And this is, I only sent an email literally 5 minutes before this to another CEO in North America. They aren't collecting this data and they want to use AI. So if they don't get this data sorted, the guardrails will be massive, like walls, because the AI won't be able to move on it. And if, as I pitch, the bottom piece is your install-based data, and that has to be super accurate and connected to all the silos in your system, and hopefully connected to your channel silos as well. The machine learning piece and the operational efficiency needs to be able to run, which is where we've come from. And then you put the AI on top, which tells the machine learning what to do rather than AI getting direct access into the data, because that's where things start to go wrong. And all of us, and iasset included, has huge legal requirements with GDPR and the Californian standards and the Australian standards everywhere in the world. And this is where I see the fundamental security threat from a data context. If you don't protect that data before the AI gets to it, and hand on heart protect it, there's a lot of companies that are going to be in trouble from a privacy breach point of view.
Yeah, all right. And Moheb, you're going to tell me why I'm wrong, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to give you 2 opportunities to tell me why I'm wrong, based on what Scott just said then. And that is the reason why is the premise. Channel programs suck. And the reason why they channel programs suck is because they don't incentivize their channel partners to store perfect data to be able to cross-sell, upsell, end of life, do everything with everything that they've actually sold off good data that can be automated easily and done with it.
Okay. Remember, so let's just step into the shoes of a vendor for a second, and we'll step in the shoes of a partner. In the shoes of a vendor, everything you just said about whether we clean data, whether it's good data, whether it's useful data, et cetera, and whether we put it in and get information out of it. Which vendor is going to make money out of that? Not a lot, right? Remember, how does a vendor make money? Selling you more stuff. So coming back to this channel program.
How are they going to send you more stuff if they don't know what they've sold you in the first place?
Wait. Sorry. This is for a customer, right? I'm going to get the customer to upgrade and buy a new shiny toy, right?
You're not telling me why I'm wrong.
No, I'm not saying that. No, the reason I was going to say you're wrong is, I was going to talk about why your data was wrong. Now we're talking about something else.
Okay.
The reason that but coming back to that, you're saying the channel programs suck because they don't incentivize partners to do that. But they don't
incentivize partners to do asset lifetime value.
Correct. They don't. They absolutely, they do not do that. Coming back to that and coming to that point, that asset lifetime value, there's money to be made for the partner in particular, and also for the vendor. But I come back to this idea about what are they commissioned on? And if they're only commissioned on selling something new and not selling on that, the channel program isn't broken. The channel program that's been created has been created to serve the way the people are being compensated. And in that respect, the channel program's ideal.
Yeah.
But change the compensation and change what the goal is, then yeah, the channel program starts. So
imagine if that rep was paid on every bit of revenue that came into the business. Doesn't matter where it came from. Doesn't matter where it came from.
Remember what I said about what advice I would give, but it's irrelevant because of the world that we live in. That is 100%. I agree with you. And I come back to this idea of profitability isn't the margin on the product. It is the total profitability. The profitability of a business is the being able to make money, not just out of the sale, but ongoing. I mean, didn't that get proven by every company that moved into recurring revenue, saying we will reward you not because of the sale you made, but because of the ongoing revenue. So absolutely, if we could do that, that would completely change the way our industry works.
Okay. So let me throw this at you guys. You're well renowned. You've got a brain bigger the size of the planet, bigger than any planet, and all right, you're well heard. And what you're telling me right now is just so right, Scott. You got a whole bunch of technology all through your life that actually helps vendors do better, and they have. Your last distributor had a 93% total addressable market share. No argument. Why aren't you two being heard?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. It depends on the culture and the market you're dealing with. If you talk about North America and vendors specifically, middle America won't take risk easily. So the thing that Australians and Europeans, and to a certain extent some of the Asian markets are brought up with, is you can't just get fired. There's a whole process, which means we can take bigger risks as a person inside a business than potentially someone who can literally be walked out the door that day. So what I find is, especially with newer technologies where, we have effectively created a market. This install-based product lifecycle piece, at least in the IT sector, did not exist until we walked into it. And so when you're trying to introduce a completely new concept to a lot of these companies, they think they can do it with Salesforce or SAP or Oracle or whatever the ERP system is. They're scared to make a decision because if they get it wrong, they're marched out the door. And as you can see, especially in North America, with all of the AI firings, which I don't believe for a minute are based on AI, they're just trying to offload people. People are nervous to make decisions that contain risk. And that, I think, is the biggest difference and the biggest challenge for the American technology.
You got me thinking, and I want to throw this to you, Moheb, because my brain just had a bit of an explosion. What is the likelihood of you being able to consult to any one of your vendor customers that you need two separate channel programs? You need a program based on net new, and you need a program based on asset lifetime value. Two separate programs. Incentives in one, incentives in the other, different channel partners on one, different channel programs by the other, your own reps being rewarded in one way versus other reps rewarded the other. What kind of response would you get if you proposed that to your vendor customers? And you've got all the good ones.
Yeah. So I want to just take that word channel program and split it into two components. Because that word channel program gets used to mean two things. It can mean the structure, meaning the tiering, number of partners, depth of partners, type of partners. And then sometimes channel program means what I call the programmatical incentives. So people refer to MDF or deal registration as a channel program. So coming back to that, do I think we need two channel structure programs for that? Probably not. I think one channel structure program can cope with all of it. But a channel incentive program alongside deal reg NDF, absolutely you could build a channel program, channel marketing program, whatever, that distinction to reward renewals. And that would make absolute sense, but only if the person at the top of that is rewarded on renewals. If they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because people won't do stuff. People won't do stuff because it's good for them. They'll do stuff because it's good for, people do stuff because of, and I don't want to make it sound like everyone's coin operated. That's not, that's not what drives everyone. But when you're given an incentive scheme, that is the communication that executive management use to say to their staff, this is what we think is important. This is what we want you to focus on. Forgetting money, it's how you incent people on what's important.
Well, by definition, incentivizing is money. But the reason why I asked you the question is because I'm trying to work through this as we have this incredible conversation. And that is, I believe that one is incentivized by your execution on net new business that you generate, channel partner. But the lifetime value of what you've already sold is an investment in tools. Would they ever invest in tools as opposed to programs? And that's what I'm trying to think about. And Scott, I want your opinion on this because you live it. What's the likelihood?
I think there's a challenge. The challenge, if you think about tool investment, the challenge is the channel organization inside the vendors don't normally get the budget to run tools. They rely on IT or some other part of that business. And really, it's the channel guys we're trying to help by enabling a channel distribution and partners in a global context. So I think there's always going to be a dichotomy between the two. And, if you look at US vendors, in my experience, if you look at the leadership table, is the CEO, the CRO, the CFO, all of the big heavyweights are on there. And then maybe down the end of the table, the last person to speak would be the channel chief. So they don't have that position of power for finance or your budget or whatever for tools, because that's not what their job is. They just seem to be sitting there looking after the channel.
I really need you to give me a response to that, purely because what I heard was those two business incentives, policies, those two business strategies tend to be diametrically opposed.
Well, let's take the focus off the vendor for a second, because when we talk about the renewal base and keeping customers using technology and providing services, the people that are the most likely to make money out of that is the partner, and if done well, it's actually the distributor. So in a product sale, vendor makes the most money, distributor makes less money, partner out of services makes more. But in that, if you renew and nourish your install base, it's the partner that makes the most money, and the distributor will make more money than the vendor. So when you talk about a program to encourage renewals, I don't think that fits at the vendor level. It either fits at the partner level, and they will invest in tools, or, coming back to the point I made really early on, if you can consolidate it, make it more efficient or cheaper, then a distributor could do really well. And I guess that's what you guys did with iasset. I mean, iasset was something you built within your business, and now you've taken it more broadly, and you were at that distribution level. And to me, that's where it fits. So, and I think with the larger vendors, I think that, sorry, let me try again. With the larger partners, I think they understand that. When you look at the established larger partners, they have things like a vendor alliance manager, they have a renewals team, etc. But for the mid-sized partners, they can't afford to do that. So if there's a program to encourage renewals and servicing that, etc., coming back to this idea of consolidating it, distribution could do that for the majority of the mid-tier partners. But I don't see that. Unless you change compensation plans for most country managers, I don't see it being a vendor-driven initiative.
Look, I think we're in agreement with that the compensation plans suck, and that drives human activity, right?
I would counter just a couple of points there, Moheb. The first one is, as we move to more consumption and subscription based, the vendors are shifting, and I've seen it, and I've seen the commissions follow.
Yeah.
The way I see it is, if the vendor's smart enough to run the whole install base, they should run the whole install base, because it's all about the vendor. The distributor, absolutely, as you pointed out, iasset was built out of Distribution Central, and that's why we maintained such stickiness, is because we ran it on behalf of the vendor who didn't have anything, and the partner who didn't have anything. But at the partner level, even though DC was the best distributor on the planet, you couldn't buy everything from DC. You still had to go to Ingram and Tech Data or Avnet or whoever it was. So the reseller then has this hole. So some of their products are covered, but some of their products aren't. And that's where the partner should, in my opinion, run their own install base so that they can deal with whichever distributor or vendor they want to deal with, but they've still got control of their destiny. And as I told a partner yesterday, this is about equity value. If you sell, a lot of MSPs are getting to retirement age and they want to sell the business. If you sell with all of that rich live install base data and nothing's ever missed and you understand your business from that point of view, it's worth a lot more to an acquirer than, oh, we just sell stuff and we've got some services guys out the back.
Yep, and I'd agree 100% with that. And that's what I mean by that's where the most value is. It's actually at the partner tier, if they can do it. But if you're a small partner, unless you've got a tool that's affordable and easy to manage and so on, small partners are going to be able to do it. And that's where it moves up into the distribution tier. But without a doubt, the most valuable tier for that data to exist and to be nurtured and developed and leveraged exists at the partner tier.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, all right, I'll back off a bit on the tool, and I'll say if you're a small partner, you don't need to have a tool because you've only got a few customers, right? So you don't need a tool. You're right there. But as you get more and more successful, you will need a tool because you will need to be able to automate a lot of that. And the reason why I say that, Mohib, you tell me what you think. The intellectual property of a partner is their customer relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's all that gets bought. I know I've sat on too many deals in my life where I've helped partners sell their businesses and that, and the only thing of value is their customer relationship and how entrenched they are. So, and let me tell you, Scotty and I've sold a few distributors in our lives.
Yeah.
The value. That's the value. All right. So it just keeps going up from a vendor. They're now no longer getting judged on Wall Street or NASDAQ on any exchange in the world anymore by anything other than earnings. And the massive amount of churn that's going on with a lot of vendors at the moment, like I introduced it before when I was saying who was number one is now number 6, nothing is now number 1, you know, that in a sphere, and I referenced cybersecurity, that values the company. They've got to know from the top that the most important thing that they ever have is a channel managing a customer base. And that's why I say, I flip it and say, you know, how is that 100% channel strategy working for you, channel? And it's not, because it's 100% abrogation of responsibility of the vendor to a channel that's making bugger all percent on doing transactional business because that's all they can afford, because it's still not 100% channel. It's their reps doing the big deals. And the only reason why the channel sees it is because they can't transact it.
And so you made an interesting comment where you said the strongest thing is for a partner is their channel relationships. And I agree with that, by the way. But what's interesting is when you talk to so many vendors, and especially an enterprise account manager, how many of them think it's their relationship? So that's the question, like who actually owns a relationship? Is it the vendor or the partner?
Well, that's an easy one. Whoever's on the relationship. When I'm a pigeon and I jump in and I sell something and never see that customer again, hey, sorry, vendor rep, I don't have that relationship anymore. But the bastard that you put the deal through that is killing themselves to try to keep that technology alive, they own it. That's easy. That's simple. 100% strike rate.
Oh, no, see, I want to be, I just for a second, for fun, I want to be devil's advocate. No, what a load of crap. I'm the vendor. If it wasn't for my product, you wouldn't have made a sale. You wouldn't have anything to service. It's me. They bought my stuff. So
yes, I 100% agree with you. But guess what? That event is over.
Yeah.
That event is over. It's done.
Yeah.
We're one day ahead of that, 2, 5, 20, 50, 100 days ahead of that now. That's the conversation we're having. And And your technology no longer matters anymore. The relationship between whoever is keeping the technology alive in that end customer matters.
It does. So coming back to that, this idea about the channel fills the gap. If the customer experience is so close to the product, the channel's not playing that role, and it really is the vendor. So in other words, and especially in a recurring revenue world, if you buy the product and it works, the channel's not doing very much. And going back to your point, 20, 50, 100 days, I reckon the customer may not even know who they bought it from because they've not had to talk to them in those 100 days. But if it's a network, so a security solution, and the partner is managing it, reporting, letting you know what's happening, addressing breaches, etc., then the product becomes irrelevant. So I think it's still a function of not so much who sold it, but who the customer is dealing with to make sure it continues to work. And if the only person you're dealing with, by the way, is the bill that you get once a month and you pay it, and that's the only thing, then I've got to say the vendor owns that account. And that's not a great message for the.
That's not a good.
It's not
For the customer.
It's
not a good outcome for the customer.
Oh, well, no, it depends. So I don't need a channel partner helping me with my Spotify account, right? Yep. Okay, that's what I mean.
Well, I don't know, Mohib. It depends on your playlists, right?
Scott would beg to differ. I just changed my iPhone because you made me change my iPhone, and I hate my life.
Yeah.
I need a channel partner.
Okay, but that's a project-based thing. They'll teach you how to use it, and then they'll say, "Off you go, Nick. Don't come and talk to me again." Right?
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, who keeps that technology working is who really owns that customer. It's who the customer is interacting.
We agree.
Yeah, and as I say, if it's but if it's if it is especially if you're a small organization, if you're a bakery or a Smash Repairs, and you don't care about you just need it to work. And if there's a breach, you expect somebody to jump in and fix that breach. Well, your relationship is with that partner. And the way that is if let's say you're the customer, if I was the vendor and went to you and said, we're no longer dealing with that partner, get rid of them. Or if I was a partner and I said, we're no longer dealing with that vendor, get rid of them. The decision you make tells you who owns you.
Wise words, mate. These are very wise words.
It would tell you who owns that account. And actually, and this is a really stupid example, but I've used this before. Pretend you wanted to buy your favorite soft drink from the store down the road, and you walk into the store and they don't have that drink there, right? You've only got two choices, right? You buy something else, or you walk out and go somewhere else. That stupid, simple little decision is, which is more important to you, the vendor or the channel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? And that, yeah. And I'm going to say the same thing. So who owns the vendor? Oh, sorry, who owns the customer? The vendor doesn't decide, the partner doesn't decide, it's the customer decides. It's who would they get rid of if one of them said, get rid of that guy, I don't like them anymore.
Well, as we say, Mohib, no one owns the customer. You rent them, and the rent's due every month.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that phrase. I might use that, but of course, I won't give you credit for it.
I'll give you a better one, you two. Don't think about recurring revenue. Think about recurring customer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yes. I like that as well.
Are we agreeing?
Yeah. That's going to happen at least once. Otherwise, we wouldn't do this, right?
I'm going to throw the last word to you guys. How's that 100% channel strategy working for you, Mohib?
I think it's a two-way street, and I've got to admit, when I wrote that article, it was very much written from the vendor's perspective, which is, if you're going to have a channel, then leverage them. If you're going to say you're 100% channel, then do the stuff that makes a channel effective. Don't just do it all yourself and flick it to them to make money out of. But there's also an onus on the partner as well to do the same thing. It's surprising how often I hear from vendors that we run training courses and our partners don't show up, or we run a program and the partner doesn't embrace it or whatever. And so it is a two-way street. If a vendor says we're going to invest in you as a partner, then you need to do that properly and not do some of the stuff I talked about, like flick it to another partner or somebody call it at the end of the quarter that, oh no, it's really one of ours, not one of theirs, whatever. But a partner's got to do the same thing, and that is to say, I'm going to be clear and transparent with the vendor, and that is if I'm going to sell something else, I'm going to let them know and why. And yeah, so Scott talked about trust, and I know it's corny and it's a thrown away word, but trust comes down to I'm going to have a hard conversation with you. I'm going to tell you I'm going to do something you won't like, but I'm going to do that because I'd rather do that than go behind your back and you might find out.
Thank you, mate. Scott, Moheb just gave every one of my viewers at least $10,000 worth of perfect consultancy. Throw it back.
Well, no, it's not about throwing it back. I'm completely aligned. The hardest thing to do in a channel is to have the difficult conversations. It's fine if everything's sunny and sailing and money's going through. There's, I guess there's three types of channel partners in the world. There's the ones that are very upfront, and maybe that's difficult sometimes with the vendor because they've chosen something else, but they should be able to defend the reasons for going somewhere else. There's the ones in the middle that'll sort of shift and move around, and then there's ones at the bottom who'll do things like deal reg on one vendor to lock them out of a deal and then go and sell the other vendor's products, right? There's still a lot of pirates floating around even after 40 years of being in this game. Trust is the most important thing in a channel network ever. And as soon as someone breaks trust, that puts you in a difficult position. If you're a channel partner and you break trust, then you're not going to get that support from the distributor or the vendor. If it's the other way around, they're not going to sell the vendor's kit or deal with that distributor. So, as I've tried to explain to my son who's joined the industry, it's all about cycles, and the cycles might be years, but if you screw up something, it's going to come back and bite you somewhere because the cycles are never ending.
And I would add to both of your agreement that trust these days has a much more significant element of data-driven in it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful episode. I just knew it was going to be awesome. Show notes will include connections to Moheb, and we will see you on the next one. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much. All the best to you all.
Thank you. Bye.